Father Michael Romano, thank you so much for joining us. Holy orders, one of the sacraments at the service of communion alongside marriage, it confuses many people. How would you explain this sacrament?
Service and communion are certainly two great words to describe the sacrament of holy orders. Priesthood is definitely intended to be a vocation of service, a call to service, serving God, and then serving his people. And in serving his people, it's one way just to lead them closer into communion with the Lord. I oftentimes like to think of the priests using the image of the friend of the bridegroom, a John the Baptist sort of figure, where our role is to draw people in, but then not to ourselves, really that we're pushing people towards the Lord, pointing him out. As John the Baptist said, he must increase, I must decrease, and that needs to be our role, that we be men of prayer, and that through our teaching, our preaching, the celebration of the sacraments, and then just all of the different ways that we can serve people, hopefully we draw them closer to the Lord and then journey with them and accompany them together as we walk together on the way to eternal life, to heaven with the Lord.
I love that you said it really is a sacrament of service. Of these 7 sacraments, marriage and holy orders are not necessarily for everyone. How are they different from the other 5, the sacraments of initiation and healing?
I do think that for marriage and for holy orders, both of them have to do with God's plan in an individual person's life. With marriage, God's plan that there's one person in his or her life that they're intended to give themselves to, and that the two of them help each other on their journey to heaven, that their only desire is for the good of the other person. And then for priesthood, that God's got a particular plan for certain men to give themselves in service that way. Whereas hopefully God's desire is that everyone be baptized, everyone celebrate those other sacraments that we need, the sacraments of initiation to draw us into the life of the church, draw us into communion with him, as well as the 2 sacraments of healing, which we all need at different times in our lives, where these are sacraments we receive one time, and that they're both called to, as part of God's plan, to draw us closer to him, and the marriage to one person in particular, and for priests, the communities that they serve.
Their marriage to the church, right? Well, the seminary has prepared thousands of men for a religious vocation as a priest. How do you prepare someone for that kind of life? What's the most important part of that formation?
That's great. The most important part, I would say it has to be in the formation relationship, that it's an environment of trust and openness on both parts, the part of the seminarian and then the part of the priest who's working with the seminarian in his formation, that they can really that the priest can accompany him as the man makes himself known to the church, and as the man comes to know himself through the years of seminary formation. Formation is based in 4 different areas. So there's human formation, which is the man that people encounter at first. And all of us enter the seminary needing to have certain bad habits refined, or different things that we can do so that we're more approachable to people when they encounter us. Spiritual formation would be the second dimension of preparation for the priesthood, the man's prayer life, his relationship with the Lord, opening himself about that as he tries to grow in virtue. Intellectual formation would be his academic life, learning about the teachings of the church so that he can preach those and help people to come to understand and believe them more fully. And then finally, the apostolic or pastoral dimension of formation, which is kind of the end point, that the man is sent out to work in a parish or other ministries. And he practices some of that during his years of seminary, learning how to be an effective minister to God's people. But him being able to discuss that in an environment of openness and trust allows him to realize that the church has his best interest and is helping him to become the best man that he can be as he prepares himself for ordination.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful preparation. Well, for the viewers that have never been to an ordination and seen seminarians face down on the floor as they take their vows, why is there a physical component to this spiritual commitment?
Well, first, if you have not been to an ordination, you really should try to get to one. It's such a unique experience. It's the Catholic Church and her sacraments using symbols and gestures and postures in just unique ways that you would never see before. That element of prostration is certainly one that sticks out in people's minds. And I think that part of the reason that a man lays prostrate on the floor is that it's a gesture of humility and an acknowledgement that really all he can offer is himself. When we enter the seminary, we have an idealized version of who we will become at the end. And I think the way we arrive at true freedom to be ordained is when we realize that all I can offer really is myself, who I am, not an idealized version of me. And so instead of coming with clenched fists into ordination, it's really with empty hands and laying on the floor. And as the man is laying prostrate on the floor, listening to the people of God chant the litany of the saints, so them offering their prayers, knowing that the people are praying for him, as well as the saints interceding for him as he prepares to offer his life in service to the church.
Well, you said it right. People really should be going out in droves to witness that wonderful moment of deep humility and abandonment to the Lord. What do you want prospective vocations to know about this sacrament? We have a crisis, some people say, in vocations where we don't have as many priests as we wish we did. What do you wish people knew about this, about holy orders?
I wish that people that feel, that young men that feel potentially called to the priesthood would not be afraid, first and foremost. I think there's that just initial sense of the unknown, and so a fear of entering into that. Certainly a fear of unworthiness, but then because the priesthood has not always been looked at in the best light due to the sins of priests that have been so public over the past 20 years or so, there can be a fear in that too. And yet the priesthood, when lived well, is a holy life, is a happy life, is a healthy life. And it's such a rewarding way to give of yourself to the Lord and his church. And we have to always believe that if we follow God's plan, he knows what is best for us. And so trusting in that, talking to people that we can confide in and that we respect their opinions going forward, hopefully we can remove some of that fear, maybe some of that stigma, and then just to try to explore it in a sense of openness, in a sense of honestly seeking and trusting in God's plan.
Absolutely. And the phrase that's repeated so many times in the Bible, be not afraid. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To find out more on the life of a priest, you can visit diocesanpriest.com if you're seeking a life as a parish priest. And you can also visit religiousbrotherhood.com for information on male religious communities. And if you're a woman considering entering into consecrated life in the church, visit the Council of Major Superiors of Women Religious at cmswr.org. You'll find dozens of resources as well as links to the different communities throughout the U.S.